Commander Minji Wu floated in the observation deck of Coalition Station 7, watching Earth turn slowly below. The blue and green planet looked peaceful, just like it had for the past 300 years since humanity joined the Galactic Coalition. Farms covered most of the land, and the oceans sparkled clean and bright. It was hard to believe that 8 billion humans lived down there. Her communication panel beeped softly. "Commander, we're getting reports from the outer system sensors," said Lieutenant Torres, his voice tight with worry. "What kind of reports?" Minji Wu pushed off from the window and floated over to her command station. "Unknown ships, ma'am. Big ones. They just dropped out of hyperspace near the edge of the system." Minji Wu felt her stomach drop. "How many ships?" 50, Commander. Maybe more. They're huge, bigger than anything in our database." Minji Wu pulled up the sensor readings on her main screen. What she saw made her hands shake. 50 massive black ships hung in space like dark metal mountains. Each one was easily 3 times the size of a coalition dreadnought. They looked wrong somehow, as if they absorbed light instead of reflecting it. "Get me a connection to Coalition Command," she ordered. While Torres worked on the communication link, Minji Wu stared at the ships. She had heard stories about them from other sectors. The Shadowfall Empire had appeared from the dark rim of the galaxy 6 months ago. They conquered every system they visited. Their ships were immune to normal weapons, and they never left survivors. "Commander, I've got Admiral Chen on the line," Torres announced. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen, his expression grim. "Commander Min, I assume you're seeing what we're seeing." "Yes, sir. 50 Shadowfall ships, probably more coming. Our nearest fleet is 3 days away. The 7th Fleet is fighting the Krex rebels, and the 3rd Fleet is dealing with pirates in the Outer Rim. You've got 2 coalition frigates and a support ship. That's all." Minji Wu closed her eyes for a moment. "What are our orders, sir?" "Protect Earth if you can. If you can't, well, try to get as many civilians off planet as possible." The communication ended, leaving Minji Wu staring at a blank screen. 2 frigates against 50 dreadnoughts. It would be like throwing rocks at a mountain. "Commander," Torres called out. "The Shadowfall ships are moving. They're heading straight for Earth." Minji Wu watched the dark ships begin their approach. They moved with terrifying grace, like sharks swimming through space. In 6 hours, they would reach Earth's orbit. "Send a message to all coalition ships in the system. Tell them to prepare for evacuation operations. Then get me a connection to Earth's Agricultural Council." The screen flickered, and suddenly Minji Wu was looking at a simple office. Wooden furniture, real plants, growing in pots, and windows that showed farmland stretching to the horizon. An elderly human man sat behind a desk, his gray hair neatly combed and his clothes plain but clean. "Director Park," Minji Wu said. "We have a situation." "I know," Park Sang-min replied calmly. "We've been tracking the ships since they arrived. 53 vessels, to be exact. Director, we need to begin immediate evacuation of your population. The Shadowfall Empire doesn't take prisoners. They destroy everything." Park smiled sadly. 8 billion people, Commander. Where would we evacuate them to? And in 6 hours? We have to try something. These ships have conquered 12 systems. They have weapons that can break through any shield we know about. Their hulls are made of some kind of material that absorbs energy. We've never seen anything like them. "No," Park agreed. Something in his voice made Minji Wu pause. "Director, what aren't you telling me?" Park stood up from his desk and walked to the window. Outside, farmers were working in their fields, harvesting crops as if nothing was wrong. "Commander, how long has Earth been part of the coalition?" 307 years, sir. "And what do you know about Earth's history before that?" "Well, you were developing space travel. Agricultural world. Mostly. Some small conflicts. But nothing major in your historical records. Park turned back to face the screen. His eyes looked much older than his face. Commander Min, I need you to move your ships back. At least 1 million kilometers from Earth. Sir, we're here to protect you. No, Park said firmly. You're here to watch. What's about to happen? The galaxy forgot that Earth was ever anything other than a farm world. We worked very hard to make sure they forgot. Before Minji Wu could respond, her sensor officer called out. Commander! I'm getting energy readings from Earth. Big ones. They're coming from everywhere. The whole planet is lighting up like a Christmas tree. Park nodded, as if he had expected this. Tell your ships to retreat, Commander. What comes next? We tried very hard to make sure would never be necessary again. Director, what's happening down there? We're waking up the old systems. Park said quietly. For 300 years, we've been farmers and engineers and scientists. We chose peace because we knew what war really costs. But sometimes, Commander, people forget that just because someone chooses to sleep doesn't mean they can't wake up. Min Ji-woo stared at him. What old systems? The lights in Park's office flickered. And through the window, Min Ji-woo could see strange lights beginning to glow beneath the farmland. The ones we built when we learned that sometimes the only way to protect peace is to be very, very good at war. An alarm started blaring on the coalition station. The sensor readings from Earth were climbing beyond anything Min Ji-woo had ever seen. Power levels that should have been impossible for a single planet were showing up across the entire surface. Director, the Shadowfall ships will be here in 4 hours. Park Sang-min looked directly into the camera, and for a moment, Min Ji-woo saw something in his eyes that made her understand why humans had survived long enough to join the coalition. Commander, in about 3 hours, you're going to find out why some sleeping giants should never be disturbed. The communication ended, leaving Min Ji-woo staring at a blank screen while Earth began to wake up below her. Dr. Sarah Kim stood in the middle of what should have been an empty field, watching impossibly old machinery come to life around her. For 15 years, she had studied the strange metal structures buried beneath Earth's farmland. The official records called them historical defense installations from Earth's early space age. Now, she was watching them wake up. The ground beneath her feet hummed with power. Massive metal towers rose from hidden underground chambers, their surfaces covered with symbols that hurt to look at directly. Energy flowed through conduits that had been dark for 3 centuries, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with barely contained force. Professor Kim? Her assistant called out, his voice shaking. The power readings are off the charts. This technology, it's not in any database. It's like nothing I've ever seen. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. She had always suspected that Earth's historical sites were more than they appeared to be. The metal was too advanced, the design too sophisticated. Now, as ancient systems awakened around her, she realized that humanity's peaceful history might not be the whole truth. On the other side of the planet, Director Park Sang-min walked through corridors that hadn't seen light for 300 years. The Agricultural Council building was much deeper than anyone knew. Beneath the offices where humans planned crop rotations and managed food distribution lay something far more complex. Sir, called Director Lee Eun-ji, Park's deputy. All primary systems are coming online. The orbital platforms are beginning to decloak, and the lunar installations are responding to our signals. Park nodded as he entered the central command chamber. The room was enormous, filled with displays and control systems that belonged in a military headquarters, not a farming administration building. Men and women in simple civilian clothes worked at stations that controlled weapons systems capable of sterilizing solar systems. How long since the last full activation? Park asked. 312 years, sir. Not since the end of the Devourer War. Park closed his eyes for a moment, remembering. The Devourers had been a hive-mind species that consumed entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty rock behind. They had eaten their way through half the local galaxy before they reached Earth. Humanity had been young, barely into space, completely unprepared for what was coming. But humans learned fast. Too fast, maybe. They had turned their entire planet into a weapon, built ships that could crack moons, and developed technology that made matter and energy bend to their will. The war had lasted 50 years, and when it was over, there were no devourers left anywhere in the galaxy. "Sir," Lee said quietly, "the Shadowfall ships are 3 hours out. Should we show them everything?" "No," Park replied. "Just enough. The galaxy chose to forget what we were. Let's not remind them too harshly." In space, the Shadowfall Empire's fleet moved toward Earth with confident precision. Captain Vex Shadowfall stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the planet grow larger on his screens. His species had evolved as hunters, and conquest felt as natural as breathing. "Admiral," his science officer reported, "I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from the planet's surface." "Define unusual," Vex commanded. "The power output is significant. Far beyond what we would expect from an agricultural world." Vex studied the readings with interest but no concern. Every species tried something when the Shadowfall Empire came for them. Usually, it involved desperate attempts to boost their planetary shields or charge their orbital weapons. It never mattered. Shadowfall ships were built with technology taken from a dozen conquered civilizations. Their hulls absorbed energy weapons, their shields turned aside physical projectiles, and their firepower could crack a planet's crust. "Continue the approach," he ordered. "Prepare a standard conquest message." But as the fleet drew closer to Earth, strange things began happening. Captain Vex's sensors started detecting objects that shouldn't have been there. Orbital platforms were materializing out of nothing, as if they had been invisible until now. The planet's moon was changing. Structures were extending from its surface, massive constructions that registered as artificial but had power signatures unlike anything in the Shadowfall database. "Admiral," the science officer called out, his voice uncertain, "the energy readings from Earth are increasing. Exponentially. On Earth's surface." The awakening continued. Ancient factories buried beneath peaceful farmland roared to life, beginning to produce ships and weapons using designs that predated the Galactic Coalition. Automated systems that had slept for centuries began manufacturing materials that existed nowhere else in the galaxy. Sarah Kim watched in amazement as the field around her transformed into something that belonged in a science fiction story. Massive guns rose from hidden silos, their barrels pointing toward space. Energy collectors that looked like twisted metal flowers opened to catch sunlight and converted into power that made her instruments overload. "Professor," her assistant whispered, "what were humans before they joined the coalition?" Sarah stared at the weapons around her, designed with an elegance that spoke of terrible experience. "I think," she said slowly, "they were something the galaxy was very lucky to have as friends." In the command center, Park watched his displays as Earth's true defenses came online. The peaceful farmers working in the fields above had no idea that they were living on the most heavily fortified planet in the galaxy. Every farm, every city, every natural feature had been designed with defense in mind. Earth wasn't just a world that had weapons. Earth was a weapon. "Sir," Lee reported, "Luna Base is fully operational. Mars installations are coming online. The asteroid belt defense grid is responding." Park nodded. "And the shipyards? Fully functional. We can have a Dreadnought-class vessel ready for deployment in 6 hours. Make it a frigate," Park said. "Something small. We don't want to scare our coalition friends too badly." On Coalition Station 7, Commander Minji Wu watched her sensors go wild as Earth revealed its true nature. The planet's power output was climbing beyond anything in the Coalition's database. Her instruments detected construction on a scale that should have been impossible to hide. "Ma'am," Torres called out. "I'm reading. I don't know what I'm reading. Earth's moon just opened up." There's a shipyard inside it. A big one. Min Ji-woo stared at the sensor readings. How big? 1. Right. 1. 1. Big enough to build capital ships, Commander. Maybe bigger. And the power signature. It's like the entire moon is a machine. Through the observation window, Min Ji-woo could see lights beginning to shine on Earth's surface. Not city lights, but something else. Patterns of illumination that covered entire continents, pulsing with energy that made her instruments struggle to measure. Her communication system chimed. Director Park's face appeared on the screen. But now he was standing in what was clearly a military command center, surrounded by displays showing the approaching Shadowfall fleet. Commander Min, Park said calmly, I suggest you move your ships back another few 100,000 kilometers. What happens in the next hour might be educational. Captain Vex's Shadowfall felt the first hint of concern as his fleet approached Earth. The energy readings from the planet had climbed beyond anything his science officers had ever recorded. What had appeared to be a simple agricultural world was now showing power output that exceeded his entire fleet's capacity. Science Officer Krell, he commanded, explain these readings. The Shadowfall Empire's science officer, a member of a species known for their analytical abilities, stared at his instruments with confusion. Admiral, the planet's energy signature is impossible. They're generating power equivalent to a small star. The technology required would be beyond any known civilization. Vex studied the tactical display. Earth still looked peaceful from a distance, but his sensors were painting a different picture. Orbital platforms that had been invisible before now showed clearly on his screens. The planet's moon had revealed itself to be artificial, housing manufacturing facilities on an unimaginable scale. Even the asteroid belt seemed to be repositioning itself. Perhaps their defensive systems are automated, Vex suggested. Old technology, left behind by a more advanced species. Sir, Krell replied carefully. The power signatures suggest this technology is not only functional, but actively maintained. Someone has been keeping these systems operational for a very long time. Vex dismissed the concern with a gesture. The Shadowfall Empire had conquered species with advanced technology before. Energy shields, particle weapons, even temporal manipulation devices had all proven useless against Shadowfall ships. Their hulls were built from materials that absorbed energy attacks, and their weapons could pierce any known defense. Begin the attack, he ordered. Target the orbital platforms first. On Earth's surface, Director Park Sang-min stood in the command center, watching the Shadowfall fleet prepare to fire. Around him, humans who had spent 3 centuries pretending to be simple farmers operated control systems that managed the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. Sir, Director Lee reported, the Shadowfall ships are charging their weapons. Should we raise the planetary shields? Not yet, Park replied. Let them fire first. They need to understand what they're dealing with. Dr. Sarah Kim crouched behind a boulder, watching ancient weapon systems rise from the field around her. The massive defense towers had extended to their full height, easily 100 meters tall, their surfaces covered with geometric patterns that seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. Professor, her assistant called out. We should get to the emergency bunker. Those ships are about to start shooting. Sarah shook her head. Look at the towers. They're not pointing at the sky. They're pointed at the ground. Before her assistant could ask what she meant, the Shadowfall fleet opened fire. 53 dreadnoughts unleashed their full weapon arrays simultaneously. Energy beams that could melt asteroids lanced down toward Earth's orbital platforms. Particle cannons that had shattered the shields of a dozen species fired in perfect coordination. The combined firepower was enough to crack a moon. The weapons struck Earth's defensive grid and simply disappeared. Captain Vex stared at his tactical display in disbelief. Science officer, report. Krell's hands moved frantically over his instruments. Sir, our weapons are hitting their target, but the energy is being absorbed, redirected. The planetary defense grid is converting our attacks into power for their own systems. That's impossible. Yes, sir, it should be. But their power output just increased by exactly the amount of energy we fired at them. Vex felt something he had never experienced before in battle. Uncertainty. All ships, maximum firepower, overwhelm their absorption capacity. The Shadowfall fleet fired again, this time with every weapon they possessed. The energy output was enough to sterilize a continent. The beams struck Earth's defenses and vanished just as completely as before. In the command center, Park watched his displays as Earth's defensive grid drank in the enemy's attacks like a sponge absorbing water. Energy absorption at 30% of capacity, Lee reported. Shall we demonstrate what happens when we redirect it? Just a small demonstration, Park said. We don't want to destroy them. The defense towers that Sarah had been watching suddenly turned skyward. For a moment, energy gathered at their tips, so bright it hurt to look at. Then, they fired. The beams that lanced up from Earth's surface were unlike anything in the galaxy's database. They didn't travel through space so much as they carved reality itself, reaching the Shadowfall fleet instantly regardless of distance. When they struck the Empire's ships, the results were immediate and terrifying. The first dreadnought simply stopped. Not destroyed, not damaged, but held perfectly still in space, as if caught in invisible amber. The second ship found its weapons systems shutting down one by one. The third began rotating slowly, its crew unable to control their own vessel. Sir, Krell shouted, they're not destroying us. They're playing with us. Captain Vex stared at his trapped ships. Earth's weapons had disabled his fleet without killing a single crew member. The precision required was beyond anything he had ever seen. Open a communication channel to the planet. Director Park's face appeared on the main screen. He looked like a kind grandfather, dressed in simple civilian clothes, standing in what was obviously a farming office. Behind him, though, Vex could see displays showing the positions of every ship in his fleet. I am Captain Vex Shadowfall of the Shadowfall Empire, Vex announced. You will surrender your world or face complete annihilation. Park smiled sadly. Captain, you've fired everything you have at us twice now. Your most powerful weapons couldn't damage a single orbital platform. Your entire fleet is currently being held motionless by systems we consider defensive in nature. Perhaps it's time to discuss your surrender. Our ships are invulnerable, Vex snarled. Our hulls absorb any energy weapon. Our shields deflect all physical attacks. No species has ever. Your hulls absorb energy. Park interrupted gently. Our weapons don't use energy. They manipulate the fundamental forces that hold matter together. Your shields deflect attacks. Our systems control gravity, space, and time itself. Captain, your technology is advanced, but it's still just technology. We stopped thinking in those terms a very long time ago. Vex looked at his displays. His ships were trapped, helpless, but completely unharmed. What do you want? What we've always wanted, Park replied. To tend our gardens and live in peace. The problem, Captain, is that people keep forcing us to do otherwise. On Coalition Station 7, Commander Minji Wu watched in amazement as Earth's true nature revealed itself. The planet hadn't just defended itself against the most powerful fleet she'd ever seen. It had done so casually, almost gently, while absorbing enough energy to power a solar system. Commander, Torres called out. I'm detecting movement from Earth's moon. Something's launching. Minji Wu turned her sensors toward Luna and gasped. A single ship was emerging from the moon's hidden shipyard. It was small, no bigger than a coalition frigate, but the power readings from it were extraordinary. Ma'am, Torres said quietly, that little ship is showing a power signature that matches our largest dreadnought. The ship moved through space with impossible grace, reaching the trapped Shadowfall fleet in minutes despite the vast distances involved. As it approached, Captain Vex's remaining ships began powering down one by one. Not through damage, but through some form of remote control. Park's voice came over the communication system again. "Captain, that ship contains one human pilot. She's going to visit each of your vessels and explain some things about the galaxy you may not have understood before. Please listen carefully. What you learn in the next hour will determine whether your species has a future." Captain Vex stared at the small Earth ship as it approached his flagship. Through his viewports, he could see other Earth vessels emerging from hidden facilities across the solar system. Not hundreds, not thousands, but millions of ships. Each one radiating power that made his dreadnoughts look like toys. "Science officer," he whispered. "How many ships are they launching?" Krell's voice was barely audible. "Sir, I'm reading defense platforms in the asteroid belt, hidden bases on every planet and moon, and shipyards that extend through dimensions I didn't know existed. If they wanted to, they could field a fleet that would outnumber every other species in the galaxy combined." Vex realized he had made a terrible mistake. Earth wasn't a peaceful farming world that happened to have some old defenses. Earth was a military superpower that had chosen to pretend to be harmless. And now that pretense was ending. The small Earth ship docked with Captain Vex's flagship without asking permission. Shadowfall security systems, designed to prevent any unauthorized boarding, simply opened the airlocks and welcomed the visitor inside. Vex watched his own ship betray him with technology he couldn't understand. The human who stepped onto his bridge was not what he had expected. Commander Park Min-jung was small and young-looking, wearing a simple gray uniform with no visible weapons. She moved with the calm confidence of someone who knew that she was absolutely safe, regardless of where she went or what she faced. "Captain Vex," she said politely. "I'm Commander Park. I'd like to talk with you about your species' future." Vex's bridge crew, all experienced warriors from a dozen conquered worlds, watched nervously as the single human walked among them. Their weapons were still functional, but somehow everyone understood that violence would be pointless. "You're here to gloat," Vex said, "to show us how helpless we are." "No," Min-jung replied. "I'm here to teach you something my people learned a long time ago. Would you like to see what your empire looks like from our perspective?" She gestured to the main screen, and suddenly Vex was looking at a tactical display that showed his entire territory. Hundreds of systems, thousands of ships, millions of conquered beings. The Shadowfall Empire's domain stretched across a significant portion of the galaxy. "Impressive," Min-jung said. Then the display changed. New contacts appeared on the screen. So many that the Empire's territory looked tiny by comparison. Earth's true military presence became visible, and Vex realized that his entire empire existed within what was essentially a small corner of humanity's sphere of influence. "We've been watching you," Min-jung explained. "Every conquest, every battle, every choice your species has made. We hoped you would choose cooperation over domination, but you seemed determined to learn the hard way." "You could have stopped us at any time," Vex whispered. "Yes. But stopping you by force would have taught you nothing. Your species needed to understand the difference between power and wisdom before you could move forward." She touched another control, and the display showed Earth's true defensive network. Weapons platforms hidden in empty space, ships disguised as asteroids, entire star systems that were actually massive fortresses. The scale was overwhelming. "Captain, what you're seeing represents about 5% of Earth's defensive capability. We built these systems during our war with the Devourers, 300 years ago. Since then, we've been improving them while pretending to be simple farmers." Vex stared at the display. "Why? Why hide all this?" "Because the galaxy needed time to grow up," Min-jung replied. "When we finished the Devourer War, we were the most powerful military force that had ever existed. We could have conquered everyone, ruled everything, made ourselves gods among the stars. Instead, we chose to sleep and let other species develop their own strength. She changed the display again, showing the current state of the galaxy. The Coalition's peaceful expansion, trade routes connecting hundreds of species, scientific cooperation that had advanced every member civilization. This is what we wanted to see. A galaxy where different species work together instead of trying to dominate each other. And now we've ruined it, Vex said bitterly. No, Minjung said firmly. You've given it a chance to prove itself. Your empire's aggression has shown the galaxy that peace requires protection. Species that have never worked together before are now cooperating to defend themselves. You've accidentally created the strongest alliance in galactic history. On Coalition Station 7, Commander Min Ji-woo was receiving reports from across the galaxy. The Shadowfall Empire's attack on Earth had triggered responses from every Coalition member. Fleets that had never operated together were converging on strategic positions. Scientific resources were being shared freely. The Empire's aggression had indeed united the galaxy in a way that centuries of diplomacy had never achieved. Ma'am, Torres reported. I'm getting word from Admiral Chen. The Coalition Council has voted unanimously to offer full membership to any species willing to renounce conquest as a tool of expansion. Meanwhile, on Vex's ship, Commander Park was showing him something else. A detailed analysis of Shadowfall technology, broken down and understood completely. Your ships are impressive, she said. The energy absorption hulls are clever. The weapons systems are efficient. But they're all based on the same principle. Taking energy from others and using it for yourself. It's a perfect reflection of how your empire operates. You're saying we're parasites. I'm saying you're afraid, Minjung replied gently. Your entire culture is built around the fear that there isn't enough for everyone. So you have to take what others have. But look at this. The display changed to show Earth's manufacturing systems. Instead of strip mining planets and enslaving populations, humans had learned to work with natural systems. Their farms produced more food than entire conquered worlds. Their manufacturing systems created materials without depleting resources. Their energy collection methods actually improved the environments they operated in. We learned that cooperation creates abundance, Minjung explained. Conquest only creates scarcity. The energy you spend dominating others could be used to build something better for everyone. Vex studied the data, his scientific training warring with his cultural conditioning. This is all very interesting, but my people will never accept it. We are warriors. Conquest is what we do. Captain, do you know what we were before the Devourer War? Well, Vex shook his head. Farmers, mostly. Some scientists and engineers. A few soldiers. But mainly we grew food and made things. We were peaceful because we had never needed to be anything else. Then the Devourers came, and we learned something important. She touched another control, and the screen showed images from the Devourer War. Massive alien ships consuming entire planets. Hive-mind creatures that turned everything they touched into more of themselves. The complete annihilation of civilizations that had existed for millions of years. We learned that sometimes the only way to protect what you love is to become very, very good at destroying what threatens it. So, we became the most effective military force in galactic history. We built weapons that could sterilize systems and ships that could travel between dimensions. We turned our entire species into a war machine. The images changed, showing the end of the war. Empty space where the Devourer homeworld had been. Weapons so powerful they had erased their targets from existence itself. And then we won, Minjung continued. Completely. Totally. There were no Devourers left anywhere in the galaxy. We had achieved perfect victory, and we realized something terrible. What? We had become the thing we fought. We were so good at destruction that we could have eaten the galaxy just as completely as the Devourers would have. The only difference was our motivation. Vex stared at her. We chose to sleep. We hid our weapons, pretended to be harmless, and spent 3 centuries learning how to be human again. We became farmers, because growing things is the opposite of destroying them. We joined the coalition because cooperation is the opposite of conquest. She turned to face him directly. Captain, your species has a choice. You can continue trying to build an empire based on fear and domination, and we will stop you. Permanently. Or you can choose to learn what we learned. That real strength comes from making others stronger, not weaker. The display showed Shadowfall territory again, but this time with a different overlay. Trade routes that could connect the Empire to Coalition space. Resource-sharing agreements that would make every Shadowfall world richer than Conquest ever could. Scientific cooperation that would advance their technology by centuries. We're offering your species something that has never been offered to a conquering empire before, Minjung said. A chance to become something better. To transform your strength from a weapon into a tool for building instead of destroying. Vex stared at the possibilities laid out before him. And if we refuse? Minjung's expression didn't change, but somehow the air in the room felt colder. Then you will discover why the Devourers aren't around anymore to tell their story. Through the viewport, Vex could see Earth hanging in space like a blue and green jewel. Peaceful, beautiful, and hiding enough military power to end his species without effort. For the first time since becoming a captain, he truly understood what fear felt like. How long do we have to decide? He asked quietly. As long as you need, Minjung replied. But Captain, while you're deciding, your ships will remain exactly where they are. We're very patient, but we're also very thorough. 3 months later, Commander Min Ji-woo stood in the same observation deck where she had first watched the Shadowfall Empire arrive. Earth looked exactly the same as before. Peaceful farms, clean oceans, and quiet cities. But now she knew what lay beneath that gentle surface, and it changed everything about how she saw the galaxy. Commander, Lieutenant Torres called out. We're getting a transmission from the Shadowfall delegation. Min Ji-woo smiled. Put them through. Captain Vex Shadowfall appeared on her screen, but he looked different now. His uniform was still black, but it carried new symbols. Coalition, friendship markers, and scientific cooperation badges. His expression had changed too, from the cold confidence of a conqueror to something warmer and more thoughtful. Commander Min. Vex said formally. I wanted to personally thank you for your patience during our transition period. How are your people adapting to the new arrangements? Min Ji-woo asked. Better than expected. It turns out that Shadowfall warriors make excellent engineers when they're building instead of destroying. Our shipyards are now producing vessels for the Coalition's exploration fleets instead of conquest armadas. Behind Vex, Min Ji-woo could see other Shadowfall officers working alongside beings from a dozen different species. The cooperation looked natural now, as if it had always been that way. The Council has approved your species' application for Coalition membership, Min Ji-woo told him. Welcome to the galactic community, Captain. Vex's smile was genuine. Thank you. Though I have to admit, being welcomed feels much better than conquering ever did. On Earth's surface, Director Park Sang-min was back in his original office, reviewing agricultural reports and planning crop rotations. Through his window, the same farmers worked in the same fields, growing food that would feed a dozen worlds. The only difference was that now the galaxy knew what those farmers were capable of when threatened. Sir, Director Lee called out from the doorway. The Coalition Council is asking if we'd be willing to establish a few more monitoring stations. There are some species in the Outer Rim who might benefit from guidance. Park looked up from his reports. The kind of guidance that involves revealing our defensive capabilities? The quiet kind, Lee replied. Just enough presence to let them know That the galaxy is being watched by people who prefer cooperation over conquest. Park nodded. Set up the stations, but keep them minimal. A few orbital platforms, maybe a small shipyard or two. We don't want to scare anyone unnecessarily. Dr. Sarah Kim had returned to her research, but now she was studying Earth's defensive systems with full access to their specifications. The technology was even more incredible than she had imagined. Weapons that could rearrange matter at the molecular level, ships that traveled through folded space-time, and manufacturing systems that created materials by convincing atoms to behave differently. Professor, her assistant asked, how did humans develop this technology so quickly during the Devourer War? Sarah thought about it carefully. I think it's because humans don't accept limitations very well. When someone told us we couldn't defeat the Devourers, we decided to prove them wrong. When physics said certain things were impossible, we found ways around the rules. She gestured at the defensive towers surrounding them, now dormant again but ready to wake up at a moment's notice. These systems work because humans refused to believe that there was any problem that couldn't be solved with enough creativity and determination. Across the galaxy, the effects of Earth's revelation continued to spread. Species that had never cooperated before were working together on projects that benefited everyone. The threat of conquest had been replaced by the promise of mutual advancement. The Kreks, former warriors like the Shadowfall Empire, had redirected their military expertise toward protecting trade routes and exploration missions. The Valish had opened their advanced laboratories to other species, sharing technology that accelerated everyone's development. Even the most isolationist civilizations had begun reaching out, curious about this new model of galactic cooperation. Commander Park Min-jung, the pilot who had educated Captain Vex, was now leading a new coalition program. Her small ship visited developing civilizations to offer guidance and support, backed by the quiet knowledge that Earth's defensive network was always watching. It's interesting, she reported to Director Park during one of her regular check-ins. Most species assume that having the biggest weapons makes you the strongest. They're surprised to learn that the real power comes from not needing to use them. Park smiled at that. What about the species that still choose conquest over cooperation? They usually change their minds after seeing what happened to the Shadowfall Empire. Apparently, being completely outmatched and then offered friendship instead of destruction is a very educational experience. On Coalition Station 7, Min Ji-woo was training new officers from across the galaxy. Her station had become a coordination center for the expanding coalition, managing cooperation between hundreds of species. The key thing to remember, she told her diverse class, is that strength without wisdom is just destruction waiting to happen. Earth could have conquered the entire galaxy 300 years ago. Instead, they chose to protect it. A young officer from a recently contacted species raised her hand. Commander, what if Earth ever decides to stop being protectors? What if they choose to become conquerors instead? Min Ji-woo had wondered about that herself. I've spent time with humans, both before and after, learning about their true capabilities. Their entire culture is built around the idea that power exists to protect others, not to dominate them. They become farmers because growing things makes them happy. They choose cooperation because it creates better outcomes for everyone. She gestured toward Earth, visible through the station's main viewport. Besides, they've spent 3 centuries building a galaxy where conquest is pointless, because cooperation works better. Why would they destroy something they worked so hard to create? In the Shadowfall Empire's former territory, now renamed the Shadowfall Cooperative, Captain Vex was overseeing the conversion of military installations into research facilities. His species' natural aggression had been redirected towards solving complex problems and pushing the boundaries of science. Admiral, his science officer reported, the new propulsion system is ready for testing. If it works, we'll be able to establish trade routes to galaxies that were previously unreachable. Vex nodded approvingly. Excellent. Contact Earth and ask if they'd like to participate in the test. Their expertise with advanced physics could help us avoid any unforeseen problems. As he watched his former warships being converted into exploration vessels, Vex reflected on how much his understanding of strength had changed. The Shadowfall Empire had measured power by how much it could destroy. The Shadowfall Cooperative measured success by how much it could build. Back on Earth, Director Park stood in his garden, watching the sun set over fields that hid the most advanced military technology in galactic history. His communication device chimed with reports from across the galaxy. Trade agreements signed, scientific breakthroughs shared, new species welcomed into the growing community of cooperation. Sir, Director Lee approached with a data tablet. The quarterly reports are complete. Galaxy-wide prosperity is up 18%. Armed conflicts are down to nearly zero. Scientific advancement has accelerated beyond all projections. Park nodded, satisfied. And our defensive systems? Standing by as always. Watching, protecting, but never needing to intervene. The galaxy seems to have learned that cooperation works better than conquest. Park looked up at the stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, thousands of species were working together, exploring, learning, and building something greater than any of them could achieve alone. It was everything humanity had hoped for when they chose to bury their war machine and become farmers. Sir, Lee asked quietly, do you think we'll ever have to wake up the old systems again? Park considered the question carefully. I hope not. But if someone ever threatens this peace we've all built together. He smiled, but his eyes carried the memory of what humans were capable of when protecting what they loved. Well, let's just say the galaxy has learned that some sleeping giants are best left alone. Above them, stars that had once witnessed the complete destruction of the Devourer Empire now shone down on a galaxy where different species worked together in harmony. Earth slept peacefully beneath that starlight. Its war machine dormant but ready. Its people content to tend their gardens and watch over the community they had helped create. The galaxy was safe, prosperous, and growing stronger every day. And Earth's farmers, who had once been the most dangerous military force in existence, continued to grow food and share it freely with anyone who needed it. Some threats, the galaxy had learned, were best met with overwhelming kindness, backed by overwhelming strength. Humanity had mastered both, and the stars themselves were brighter for it.